No, no buzz. Just Bees Book Club. I'm doing shit out of sequence. That's interesting. Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky. I read this for the first time when I was probably like 13 or 14, and I have not had the courage to go back to it since. This is probably, top 10. It's definitely top 10, maybe top 5 most like important books I ever read. And I've been worried about going back to it. And I think the thing that I'm going to say right now that is like extremely important is that I don't think I have a lot of interesting things to say about this book right now. I read it. I read the oh gosh, who's the translator? This is you know, held this up because it's a UK edition. It was translated by Natasha Randall, with a introduction by DVC Pierre. I have no idea who either of those people are. The introduction seems to indicate that this is like an intentional attempt at translating it in a way that makes it more accessible, or that translates it more liberally. And again, when I first read this, that was when I was like 13 or 14 ish, probably. So, I'll fucking know who translated it when I read it first. Extremely high level. I had to take some notes. So welcome back to my little notepad. Yeah. So part 1 is about a retired civil servant who received an inheritance of, I believe it was 6,000 rubles, which I did a brief amount of research and I have no idea what that means. Who rails against the world from underground. Mostly he rails against himself in the form of imagined reader interlocutors. The whole first part of this book, which is maybe the first, it's way less than that, maybe the first quarter at most, is a man yelling about how the people he imagines in his head are wrong, which is cool. And then I wrote, his is the realm of cowardice and bravery, indignation, willful penury and principle and contradiction. And I'm not going to go much deeper into that than that. And then part 2 is sort of 3 short stories ish. There's the story about the officer, which is the thing that I actually remembered better than. This is like the thing I have carried with me through the last 20 years. How do I summarize this? Because I didn't do it in my notes. The underground man. So he's 40 in the first part. He's about 24 when when part 2 starts, and he's sort of remembering what he did. At 24, he decides, or he's like in this terrible office job, and he goes out walking, I think, and ends up in a place where people were being like physically thrown through a window at a pool hall, basically. And he decides, like, I'm gonna finally take charge of my life. And he walks into the pool hall looking to get into a fight. And then he walks in and doesn't get into the fight. Instead, stands awkwardly, like, next to a billiards table, and gets lifted by his shoulders and moved out of the way. And the officer who lifts him, he, like, basically declares war on, but not vocally, just in his own brain. and he goes and basically like stalks this man and like finds out where he takes his daily walks and spends think I think years um, sort of casing the joint basically, by which I mean like finding out where this man walks and how he doesn't or who he defers to and who he doesn't defer to, and gets so in his head about the fact that he's not being that the underground man is not being deferred to by this officer, that he decides that like the ultimate revenge will be to not step aside when he's in this officer's path. And he has these incredible moments of anxiety and moments of conviction that he fails to achieve, and then ultimately he sort of briefly checks shoulders with this officer and declares it the greatest victory he's ever had. Yeah, that really works for me. It still does. And then there is the second part, which I kind of remember, but I didn't have a huge memory of, which is like I believe the classmate's name is like Zvertov. There's like a going away party for this old classmate who is about to like sort of graduate to some position within the military and to go away basically, and the underground man invites himself to it and gets fucking wasted and becomes just like the most annoying pest in the world, and he owes so many people money, and he's just like unable to do anything other than continue to be a shithead in public because he has spent so much time being a shithead by himself. And then there's the third part, which I did not remember at all, where the underground man, at the end of his attempt to re-ingratiate himself with his old classmates and or explicitly ruin his reputation, ends up basically at a sort of a brothel situation. He hires a sex worker that he is like explicitly like something along like I think she's like the least attractive one here kind of thing, and he's happy with it because he's like so put out and so visibly distraught. And then we cut to black there, and then like fade back in on the third story, which is basically him saying, or him monologuing to her about things he does not believe, but like trying to be a fucking hero. And it's so hard to read in a really brilliant way. Yeah, it was a good reminder that the point is to hate the man. Like he talks about like all of these sort of like the sublime and shit like that uh is just him pumping up his own ego in a way that he knows will specifically affect the person he's talking to, and that is sort of the general truth about this book. Um, Again, I have nothing smart to say about this, which is great because this is just for bees. Is it just Bees Book Club? No one is watching this except for bees. Um, yeah. The the long and short of it is like I decided to reread this book for the first time since I read it for the first time again like 20 years ago. This was incredibly impactful on me in a way that I spent most of the time that I was reading it trying to interrogate and not doing a great job because, oh boy, that person that I was so just engaged in and like actively ignoring the traumatic experiences that I had had that that they kind of like just decided to say fuck it. And again, I you know, this is not I'm like I'm isolating this in a way that isn't fair, right? Because this is the same time in a bunch of different ways. Like that, this is the same time I'm like engaging with Camus in the first place. I'm becoming enamored with the existentialists and the sort of idea that like there is no inherent meaning in the world. There is nothing that like is simply true because it is morally good. I'm engaging with the idea that like one one must imagine Sisyphus happy, right? Like the toil is not good. There's no reward for anything in the world. There is simply the fact that we do what we must do, and that we could do differently. And I think I lost a lot of that in this most recent reread that I'm, you know, now talking about into a camera. Because I was too focused on what level of engagement I had with this book as a teen, but also I guess what I'm saying before I say what I usually say to end these things is that this is probably a very useful reread for me personally, which is to say, why are you watching this? Even if you are a bee, to sort of purge some things and to maybe at some point in the future re-engage with Notes from Underground as an actual text rather than a sort of a personal totem or something like that. I think it is useful. I think it is useful and sometimes necessary, as it has proven to be to me right now, as this video evinces. To maybe not just hold on to an idea you had of a thing that was important to you, and maybe to just sort of get over the awkward idea of having to deal with it again, and just reread the bullshit. Just reread it, and who fucking cares? It feels weird, it feels bad, but like next time, maybe. Next time? Anyway. I was right, I had nothing interesting to say. Thanks for not watching.